one of the I think biggest mistakes that people make about them is thinking that they're crazy. My line has been, they're not crazy. They are extremely weird, but they are not crazy. And when you talk to them, you realize that there is a depth to their piety. And most of the people I have known, scholars or media people who have studied or filmed them, get hooked by them because in some ways they're guileless. They trust you when you come, they welcome you as friend, and then they're often very hurt when people exploit them, particularly in the media, but sometimes in books that have been written about them. So they're very trusting. There's a depth of piety in them, and they have a strange practice. And when you see it take place, you can't believe your eyes. You can't believe people are doing that, and you're seeing them do it. But it is also a very powerful ritual. And so the second thing is, they are wonderful case studies in how methods of interpreting a sacred text take shape. That's called officially hermeneutics. They don't know the word, but they practice it. And so the community shapes the way they read the scripture. And because of that, this is how I've summarized them. For the serpent handlers, the sacrament is alive, and it can kill you. So every time you go to worship, it is a matter of life and death. I think that's the biggest lesson they taught me, of the danger. And in most religious communities, particularly when they began, Christian and non-Christian, there is an element of danger, either with martyrdom, or they're over against culture, or their own sense of what they're doing leads them to set themselves on fire. Buddhists have done that. To deny the flesh, and so they starve themselves to death. So this kind of extreme religious identity often carries a great deal of danger. So, and then the other thing I think, because they seem so strange, we often don't take their worship and their insights seriously enough. And by that I mean they are a classic example in the present. And they don't have much of a future. I don't think they'll last much longer as a group, but they are a classic illustration of the power of oral tradition that was highly influential in most all religious communities, again, Christian and non-Christian. That is, many of the people early on particularly were semi-literate or illiterate. And they, so many of them memorized lengthy passages from the King James Version of the Bible. And that ability to memorize and the way to preach was passed on not in schools, not in religion majors or divinity degrees, but in the oral tradition of the community. So most of the preachers I have known would have learned to preach and learned to use their sacred text by the oral tradition that was passed on to them powerfully in the worshiping community. So they remind us of an earlier era in a kind of almost, not completely, but almost pre-written, or where story and memory of text was so important.